The call ended, but her laughter remained stuck in my ear like a knife buried too deep, impossible to pull out without tearing everything apart. It was a cruel, metallic echo that pierced my skull. I stood in the rain, in front of the motionless shelter, letting the icy water soak me to the bone. The whitish glow of the fluorescent light spilled across the cracked floor, casting shadows across the cracks in the pavement like scars that won't heal. Inside, my sister was curled up on a rusty bunk bed, wrapped in a cheap cast covering her fractured arm, shivering beneath a rough blanket impregnated with the smell of chlorine. He didn't look at me when I walked in, didn't look up. Shame doesn't allow stares. His voice kept echoing inside me. Now it's your problem. I wanted to smash the phone against the wall, smash it, feel the plastic break beneath my hand. I didn't. I put it back in my pocket with feigned calm. I learned that rage, when it explodes too quickly, only serves to consume the one inside. I leaned against the soaked bricks, let the cold sink into my skin, and breathed. The rain didn't matter, nor did the pain in my chest. The only thing that mattered was that inner silence, that dangerous calm that inhabited me. Because men who laugh like that, those who flee while others bleed, always leave traces. And I knew how to follow footprints, even those that lead to places much darker than this. I closed my eyes and imagined him. His shiny yacht, his glass of bourbon, his lover dangling from his arm like an empty trophy. Then I saw my sister. Her face swollen, her eyes dull, her confidence ripped out. One image canceled out the other. I opened my eyes. There was no more mourning, no more work. The next morning, I sat beside her. The silence weighed like a tombstone. I didn't need words. Her arm wasn't the only thing broken. She murmured once, almost inaudibly, her dry lips barely touching the air. He took everything from me. I didn't respond. There was no response possible. Hours later, as she sank into a fragile sleep, I stared at the forms stacked on the desk. Dates, injuries, withdrawals from joint accounts. All too perfect, too orderly. It wasn't a fit of impulse, it was a plan. That chilled me. Not the betrayal, not the lover, but the calculation. He'd studied my sister's every weakness, every gesture of loyalty, and turned it into a weapon against her. He emptied the accounts, liquidated the savings, transferred the house to a phantom trust, and she didn't even notice until the eviction notice landed on the table. I heard him laugh again, not in my ear, but inside my sister's empty head, where trust had once resided. I remembered my years abroad in lands where I saw men sell their loyalty for a cold bowl of power. I saw how betrayal drains the soul before the blood. My sister gave him everything, and he left her with nothing. That was the truth I swallowed like ground glass. That was the truth that burned inside me. I would return to him, but not with blind rage. I didn't storm onto his yacht. I didn't scream his name across the water. I waited because patience cuts deeper than rage. A contact gave me what I needed. Offshore accounts, transfers, cash purchases. I thought I was cautious. I wasn't. At night, I walked around the marina, listening to the hollow lap of water against the hulls. His boat stood out like a white wound, immaculate, ostentatious, arrogant. I didn't touch it. Not yet. Instead, I followed his mistress. Easy too easy. Luxury stores, salons, restaurants where a bottle cost the same as a month's rent. I thought I was untouchable. Like everyone who walks the edge of deception, I gathered everything. Receipts, call logs, photographs. It wasn't for me, it was for him. Each piece a projectile, each piece of information a bullet loaded in the magazine. When I finished, the file weighed like a sentence, and I was ready to shove it in his hands. I waited for him at the dock. He saw me first, and at that moment his smile broke slightly, as if he'd really seen a ghost. Maybe he had. I held up the folder. I didn't wave it. There was no need. I thought you'd be too busy playing the hero, he spat. But the edge of his voice was dull. I didn't answer. I handed him the folder. He opened it with disdain, and I saw the color drain from his face. Annoyance, disbelief, panic. Everything reflected there in seconds. Every receipt, every transfer, every proof of his betrayal. A mirror so sharp that no one dares to look into it. He searched for me with his eyes, expecting rage, expecting screams. All he found was silence, and that shattered him more than any blow. I leaned in, my voice as flat as a gunshot. You didn't just break her, you lit the fire and left her inside. Now, every lawyer in this state will know your name. Every creditor, every investor. You're finished. Only you don't feel the heat of the flames yet. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The lover stirred, her eyes darting between him and me. She understood. I straightened. She doesn't need to chase you. I've already caught you and turned away. I left him trembling with the file in his hands like an unbearable weight. His broken voice followed me for a few steps, but it was useless. His world had already collapsed. I just forced him to see it. Back at the shelter, my sister barely stirred when I sat down next to her. Did you talk to him? She asked. Her voice was fragile, barely a thread. But there was a glimmer in it, a spark of hope. Yes, I replied. And nothing more. I didn't need the details. I needed to rest. I looked at her against the pillow, pale, fragile. There was no more anger inside me, only clarity. Betrayal always devours itself. I only held a mirror up to her. When she fell asleep again, I got up. Outside, the rain greeted me again, cold, clean, sharp, and I understood. Her laughter, that laughter that had poisoned my nights, had been extinguished forever. I only held a mirror up to her. When she fell asleep again, I got up. Outside, the rain greeted me again, cold, clean, sharp, and I understood. Her laughter, that laughter that had poisoned my nights, had been extinguished forever. For so long, I had lived in the echo of that laughter, a sound that carried no joy, only derision, only the cruel reminder that I was never enough in her eyes. Nights became endless hours of silence punctured by that sharp, mocking sound, and it seeped into me like venom, convincing me that I was smaller, weaker, unworthy. And yet, when I stood there holding the mirror to her, when I let her see not me, but herself, her choices, her betrayals, her endless hunger to belittle, I realized it was never me who had been broken. The brokenness had always belonged to her, and I had been the one carrying its weight. As the rain soaked my shoulders, I felt it wash something away that I hadn't even known was clinging to me, the residue of her control. The streets glistened under the dim light of the lamps, and each droplet that struck my face seemed to carve out a new truth, one that whispered, "You are free now." I did not need vengeance, not really. Vengeance was already woven into the silence she now carried, the absence of her cruel laughter that would never again cut through my nights. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking toward an expectation or running from a memory. I was simply walking forward, away, into the uncertain but unclaimed future that belonged only to me. The rain was merciless, but it felt like baptism, like the world itself was scrubbing me raw so I could begin again. Every step away from that room, from her presence, was a declaration that I would not be defined by the cruelty I had endured. I thought of all the times I had begged silently for a different ending, for a softer word, for a gentler laugh that never came, and I realized that the ending had been inside me all along. The choice to leave, to survive, to reclaim the nights as my own. Her silence, now permanent, was the final punctuation to a chapter one had been too afraid to close. I inhaled deeply, the air damp and heavy, but it filled me with a steadiness I had not felt in years. I didn't look back at the house, didn't think of the bed where she lay, didn't wonder what would become of her. That wasn't my burden anymore. The rain grew harsher, the streets emptier, and still I kept moving, each stride steadier than the last. For the first time, my story wasn't being stolen from me, rewritten in her laughter, it was mine, utterly and completely. And in that storm, I understood. Freedom is never quiet when you've been silenced for so long. It roars in the downpour, it hums in your chest, it reminds you with every heartbeat that survival is its own kind of victory. And so I walked, soaked, shivering, but alive, carrying with me not the ghost of her laughter, but the strength of my silence.